Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Raypatch. This is the Future Proof Leader podcast. I'm excited to have Sara Bordeaux. She's the founder of Purposed HR. Sara, thanks so much for being on the show today. I'm very excited to hear all about your disc training. But let's kick off the show just with you telling our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your mission is.
Sounds great. Thank you, Jessica, for having me. So, as Jessica said, I'm Sara Bordeaux, founder of Purposed HR, which I started around 4 years ago so that I could help small to mid-sized businesses really just become equipped. Their leaders need to be equipped from compliance to culture. So I help businesses with their HR infrastructure as well as their leadership and culture. Leadership is a real passion of mine. I am a DISC practitioner as well, where I teach workplaces the different communication styles and how we can, leverage our communication styles to build better workplace cultures and better workplace relationships.
And I feel like everybody needs that.
Yes,
That doesn't.
absolutely they do. No one's arrived. No one is a perfect communicator.
So I guess I'll dive into some of the questions I have for you. So the first one, you work closely with executives on leadership and culture. So what are the biggest challenges leaders are actually facing right now when it comes to managing people effectively?
It's a really dynamic workforce time right now, with AI bringing change, a new generation entering the workforce. I think that leaders have to be more adaptable and be better change agents now than ever. And so I think that with AI being just ever present and almost feeling like a pressure, it's really important for leaders to think about how AI can be used to extend human touch and not replace human touch. And so, being from the HR field, especially, I think that it's really important for leaders to have that sort of HR piece involved. But I think really just bringing people together and getting them on the same page to look at AI, how they're going to utilize it in their workplace, not to replace that human touch and connection that we all need for a great workplace culture. And making sure that we're capturing thought from each generation and each level within the workplace as well.
And I would just only assume, right, when we're all communicating, there's so much to add value on every single level, from
Absolutely.
the person that's been there 30 years that has all the wisdom in the business, but maybe doing the same thing the same way for a long time, a newer generation coming in, having that, some are tech savvy. People are always like, oh, the new generation. Yeah, most of them are more
Mhm.
comfortable with electronics and processes and AI and stuff like that. But also just the mindset is pretty cool and mixing those
Absolutely.
cultures. It has to be very thoughtful on how you do it, I'm assuming. So processes are important. And I want to learn more about the disc that you use. So you use this DISC as a core part of your coaching. How does understanding personality styles actually change the way leaders communicate and lead?
Absolutely. So, DISC is a tool that assesses your communication style. And so it's really for self awareness. It helps us understand how our communication may be impacting those around us. And then the idea is to leverage that to learn how to adapt into other styles and build better workplace relationships. And so, the D is for dominance, which feels kind of antiquated. It's the driver. It's the results oriented person, right? And so the I is for influence, and this person desires connection. The S is for the stabilizer, the stability, the steadiness, and this person really likes to be behind the scenes. They're people oriented above process oriented, but both are important to them, and they really are that support, that loyalist. And then the C is for conscientiousness, and this is the person that really likes to understand the why. The details are important to them. They want to be the expert in a certain area. And so we all have different parts of these four quadrants, and just really uncovering that, it helps you identify your blind spots and then how you can improve those. So it's really a tool to build your emotional intelligence.
Do you find that people understand which one they are?
Yeah, so and when I teach it, there's a little activity that we do to help people know which one they are if they haven't taken the assessment, and then to quickly identify where in the quadrants that people are, that they may deal with on a day to day. The top of the quadrants are D and I, and so these are generally your fast paced people. And then the lower quadrants, the C and the S, These are your more like thoughtful, methodical, slower paced people. And then on the left, the D and C, these are the people who are more process driven. They're also more skeptical and questioning. And then on the right, the I and the S are more people driven, and they're also more warm and accepting. And so
Oh.
when we're in a classroom, we have people stand on different sides of the room and migrate to one side or the other, and then they end up in their quadrant typically. And it's usually fairly accurate. It's a quick way to do it, but the assessment that I give is very adaptive. So the assessment is sort of AI driven in that it asks questions based on how you're answering questions to really make sure that it's selecting the right style for you, and you can be a combination.
Now, this is kind of a silly, I mean, to me, I'm learning about this for the first time, but I would just assume each quadrant has a different way that they need to be led, right?
Yes.
Okay. So is this training is for, so you're saying that the employees come in, they understand what quadrant they are. Where do the CEOs and founders kind of integrate to understand how then to lead all the different quadrants as one
Yeah.
holistic group?
So I love talking about communication styles. It's a lot of
Okay, good.
fun because honestly, people love taking assessments. They love learning about themselves, and honestly, even if they disagree with the assessment, it's a great foundation for discussion, and it makes for a great workplace learning for a workshop. And so we talk about what do you agree and disagree with and everything. But to answer your question, um, it uncovers the blind spots. It helps you adapt to others, and so we learn how to apply it in the workshops. Like, for example, how to give feedback. If you're dealing with a D, they want the specifics. They want the results, and they don't want the result oriented, right? They don't want you to sugarcoat things. And whereas an I person, they want connection first. You have to build some connection before you can give them that tough feedback. And so for me, CD, I want examples. When you're giving me feedback, I want to know precisely, I want the details and examples, right? And so each of us receive feedback differently and give feedback differently. And so that's really why it's important for a leader to know how they communicate so that they can learn to adapt to those around them and communicate in a style which your feedback will land better if you give it in the way somebody wants to receive it, right?
As you're talking, I'm thinking about all the work roles that I've had in my past, right? So there's been, the boardrooms where you have to work with other leaders and very strong personalities, one way or the other. There was the introverted, physicist that, was on our team once, or they're very isolated, but they're very calculated, like you're saying, very hard to break through. I'm a communicator, they're not. How do you learn how to get along and lead with those kind of people? But then I could see this being very beneficial as a team leader, or then understanding your managers, your middle managers, and how to direct them so that you're optimizing kind of how that they do their performance. So do you see that this program is being like kind of all through the organization? Is that the goal, to kind of start with the leaders and then go down, or vice versa?
Yeah, either way. There are multiple modules with DISC that I have. So I what's called a Widely partner, where we have a platform called a Catalyst. And so let's say you take the DISC, you get to interact with your profile online on a platform, and it's personalized and interactive to you. And so that helps if we're training virtually, though I love to train in person. But there's a module for the workplace that can be for anyone. There's a module for Agile EQ to stretch your emotional intelligence. And then there's management specific modules for anyone who leads people. And it is really about giving feedback one-to-one, empowering your people, leading, directing, guiding, even managing up. And then there's self-directed modules. And then there's a module with DISC for it's called the Work of Leaders, and it's for the executive team on how they develop a vision, how they get alignment, how they execute on that vision. So it's really, we've got something for all levels, and you can make them into 2-hour trainings, full day trainings, series of trainings. So like if I were in a workplace, I could build out like a year-long training program just using DISC for giving feedback, in performance, for change management, for so many different things.
Yeah, and I think that there is kind of a gap. I'm sure you've seen it, but I mean, anywhere I've worked, you come in to a company and you do like yearly leadership training. It's like a 1-day seminar, 1-day conference. You go and you do leadership, and it's like, out of all the things that you should be focusing on a day-to-day basis, I feel like leadership is one of those things that is ever changing as employees change,
Mhm.
personalities change, the mission changes, might change what people need. But like,
Yeah.
I feel like so many people kind of only do it once a year. It's the annual training,
Yeah.
folks. Everybody click the buttons. What's the application look like?
Typically, in a workshop, it's a lot of discussion and breakouts and role play and action planning and things like that. And we try to make it really fun.
It sounds
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, so what do you say? Because I'm picturing, I would absolutely love a program like this in any workplace. If they would have offered something like this, it would have been very, I think, impactful.
Yeah.
In the Marine Corps, there's constant leadership, like training and
Yeah.
groups, and you're constantly going through things because you need to have that trust with your team. You just need to build that early on and keep that camaraderie and that trust. And they do, I think the military does a good job with that because
Yeah.
they're constantly feeding in, the training for that.
Promoting. Yeah.
They're promoting
Hmm.
it. And I don't know why when you switch to the business world, the corporate world, where they kind of that drops for some reason. I'm not really
Hmm.
sure why that is, but I don't know where I was going with my question, but I like how it's embedded. Oh, I remembered. So there was always people in the group that were very hesitant, like those people that are more introverted. How do you
Hmm.
bring them into the disc training when they're not
Hmm.
always so easily communicating?
Some people like just whole class discussions. Some people like one-to-one. Some people like group breakouts. So usually one of those things is going to resonate more with each individual than the other. And so that's why we mix it up. And there's, obviously some instruction time in between those that introverted person can kind of sit back and absorb. But I do think that those touch points are important because you get your wheels turning, right? I try not to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but I try to also give everyone the opportunity to share in those formats. I think that it's a really important practice to discuss it in those different modes. And then, you know, action planning is so important. So it's really important that we individually build our action plans on how we're going to grow. And a great training then also gives the leaders of those participants ways to follow up. So it gives them, here's what your participant learns, and here's how you can follow up with them.
Oh,
And
I
here's how
love
you
that.
can really instill the learning. Because, like you said, a one and done training, you're not going to see transformation. You might gain a pearl or two. You might improve by a couple of percent as a group. But if you really want to see sustained change and transformation, you need a whole learning program. And
Yeah.
so for me, that looks like a mix up of some half day or full day trainings and then some lunch and learns and then maybe some TikTok style learning where it's 2 minute tips, and some questions posed or some time blocked out on your calendar to reflect and apply, some time with your manager. So it needs to be multimodal. And, like you said, not enough businesses in the corporate world are doing it. Instead, we throw our leaders into a position and we don't equip them. And even big companies do this. Somebody's good on a manufacturing line, and so they must be good at leading it too. And that's just not how it works, right? A good leader, like so much of it, they say that 65% of leadership is emotional intelligence. And so if we're not building that muscle, if we're not building that communication and that emotional intelligence, we can't effectively lead, because leadership is influence. That's all a leader is influencing a group towards a common goal. And so if you can't communicate well, you can't build influence, you can't build trust, and you can't lead people to a common goal.
Totally agree. When I look at the workday, there's so much time for all the meetings and all the meetups that you have that, most people are like, oh, this is wasting my time. I could be doing my work. You're saying that there's a lunch, you can hop on your lunch, like do little tiny exercises that you can easily incorporate, at least on a weekly basis, just a touch point, which is
Absolutely.
very cool. Now, so where do you see leaders getting it wrong when it comes to adapting their communication style to the different perspectives or personalities?
I think where people will maybe get disc wrong is by diagnosing or pigeonholing somebody into a specific style, when the whole point is to learn to adapt to different styles for everyone. So it's real easy for somebody to say, oh, you're a C, you're that conscientiousness, you're into the details, you should be in accounting. You're probably going to be a good engineer or something like that. And there's no studies that correlate style to job success or effectiveness, but rather the ability in which you can stretch it, that you can develop your emotional intelligence. That's where the effectiveness comes in, right? And so it does tend to happen that salespeople are often high on I, or finance people are often high on the C, or managers are often high on the D, especially in manufacturing, in my experience coming from that industry. But you cannot hire or make employment decisions by that, because I may be a C, but I also do a ton of networking, right? I can adapt into that I style, even though I have none of it innately in me, right? And so I think that is where people get it wrong, is when they try to pigeonhole or diagnose or fit people into this style, because it's not to form an identity, but rather to help us understand our roadblocks.
And that's important. I actually could see people doing that. Like, oh, you have this personality, you should fit into here, or you're analytic,
Yeah.
you should be over here. I could see how and why people do that. It should be, where do you determine where people end up in your company? What do you say to leaders
Yeah,
that do that?
and there are assessments for hiring, like predictive index, and I think there's one called PXT and all of that. But that's not what DISC is for. It's for building relationships at work and becoming a better communicator. And so I think when people pull it and use it for hiring or something, that's where
I see what
it
you're saying.
fails, right? There's assessments that measure how we do work. There's assessments that measure all types of things. And so it's really important to pick the assessment that's right for what you're trying to measure and what you're trying to improve.
That makes sense. I know. We're talking desk, and I was like, you are HR overall, so you've
That's
probably
okay.
seen everything, right? But let's talk about a little bit about change management, right? So you're a
Okay.
big proponent of change management, which I love
Absolutely.
because not enough people are also like, just like leadership, they don't really focus on change management, or at least they don't put enough effort into it, and it's really important. So why do so many companies struggle to implement change, and even when they know it's necessary?
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think that companies fail when they fail to plan. The old adage, plan to fail. So I think that if communication just comes from a voice at the top and it's shoot from the hip, or this is what we're doing, that's when it fails. People need to be involved in how, like, why are we doing this change? What's the change going to address? What's the result we hope to gain from this? Who's going to be involved? How will we communicate it? And that takes more time on the front end. And I think that's why companies don't do that, but it's going to go a lot more smoothly if they do. If they put together a change management plan, they have a team to deploy, they've tested things socially, the why is clear, they have objectives. All of these aspects have to be involved in the change management process. And I've seen some decisions say, for instance, that would affect all employees and HR wasn't brought in, and it's just shot out in an email from the top. And then you have an uproar in an organization, and HR is dealing with the fallout, and we're coming in just as blind as everyone else, and that's just not, it's not good leadership. It's not a way to get people to accept change. I'm not saying be political about it, but we need to highlight, like, what are the positives, what are the reasons, what are the objectives, and all of these things before we just roll out a change.
I think that people, especially leaders, I think all of us are kind of guilty of just assuming that people know what's going on, making
Yeah,
the assumptions all the time, like, oh, well, obviously, like they know. Well, no, they don't know. And just believing. I've had leadership, and I've been in boardrooms where people are like, well, they're not going to like it. So if we give them the why or tell them what's coming, we're going to get more of a pushback up front. Let's just do it and ask for forgiveness. Well, that loses trust, right? Then it's
absolutely.
like, well, then my leaders don't understand me. And it goes back to the relationships and the
Yep.
personalities of DISC, right? Like those people that really just need to understand. Tell me an example of what's failing now, and then show me what would this, outcome look like if we implemented this new change. Whether they agree with it or not, at least they were feeling like they were part of the solution, right?
Yes.
I
Yeah, that's
mean,
how you build alignment and buy-in, is by letting people be part of that solution. Absolutely. And
yeah.
also, you never know what ideas could have come up that could have changed this pathway that may be better, you know?
Absolutely. I've had solutions to problems thinking like, oh yeah, this is great. And I ask my guys, they're like, oh, we could do it this way, way better. And I'm just like, you're so right.
Yeah.
Let's do
Yeah.
that. And then
Yeah.
they like that was their idea. Now they're gonna be a part, or maybe we collaborate a little bit and it was our idea, and then we're grooving and optimizing left and right. So yes, I agree with
Huge
you.
value in diversity of thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
People just as it's people in general, I feel like just want to be involved and included.
absolutely.
It's human nature to just not want to be left behind. And I feel like people forget that in everything in life. I feel like being inclusive is just important just to be seen and feel heard, and it just changes the trajectory, like absolutely. So
Absolutely.
in the beginning of the conversation, you talked a little bit about how AI's turmoil is happening because of AI. So as companies continue to adapt AI to move faster and increase productivity, what do you think separates organizations that are using it to strengthen their culture and communication versus those that are unintentionally creating like more disconnect?
Yeah. So honestly, a lot of what we said, like a decision rolls out from the top, it's not tested. I think that organizations that are large enough need to have committees where whoever's responsible for HR is involved, whoever's responsible for IT is involved, because you need the security element, you need the people elements, you need the operational element. How does this affect our operations? Does it make us more efficient? You need all the angles and aspects of the business represented before you just decide to go with a certain AI system or whatnot. It needs to make sense, right? It needs to build efficiency, and it needs to, again, either extend human touch or at least not replace human connection. But there is a great business case, even in HR, for AI. It's just got to be in the right places. So, one example, I heard an HR person say that she didn't want to involve AI in the onboarding program because she valued the time in orientation where they were filling out their paperwork and they could ask her questions. Well, that is silly because I would much rather fill out something online, right? That could be very easy and quick. And then you would have more time to talk to me about the culture here or whatnot, right? So it needs to make sense. That's not replacing human touch in that instance, right? But what could extend human touch is making that process more efficient. And then we have more time to talk about the company and why we love it here and this and that, what our values mean to us. So in every workflow, there's quite often an AI system that makes sense to extend human touch and build efficiency.
There's such a fear, and you're in the HR with the disc training. I'm sure you're seeing it a lot. People are just starting to get really hesitant, protective, and almost like defensive over their positions. Like, well, you can't come in here and replace me and stuff with AI or whatever. And we are always at the advantage point of like, I believe that without the 3 hours of emails that you're doing, you can spend that 3 hours doing something way more strategic, way more creative, and we're going to shift you this way, not replace you. I think the companies that are replacing employees so quickly are really setting themselves up for failure because there's a lot of talent that you're losing. And AI is like rolling out left and right. Like it's not tried and true quite yet in every capacity where
Yeah.
I think humans can optimize and help make it a little bit more creative. In your disc training, are you seeing people kind of discussing how they're feeling about AI coming into the workplace and in their personality a
Yes.
little
So
bit?
I definitely see that more through my HR consultation. There's a lot. I demoed a performance review system that integrates AI just today. I mean, there are a lot of areas where AI is coming into systems, and other HR practitioners are saying like, is this compliant? Does it work well? Does it save us time? Do people like it? So there's a lot of questions around a lot of systems. There's so many, from mom and pop to major organizations, to choose from sometimes for every budget, and it's hard to choose. It's hard to decide. And so, but there are some really great programs. I see a lot of talk about AI. And like you said, it's all spectrums, right? There's people who are really scared of it, want nothing to do with it. There's people who want AI in every aspect of work, and there has to be a middle ground where it's evaluated and it makes sense for our workflow and our company. There is a lot in the HR community about AI and what's working well.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, we talked so much about everything today, going back to the whole idea of embedding leadership into the workspace on a regular basis. So, those that are kind of hearing today and really interested in DISC, where can they find you to set up some training?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is purposedhr.com. I am on LinkedIn. So you can find me personally under Sara Bordeaux. You can also find Purposed HR on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. I am very active on LinkedIn.
Well, thanks for your time today. I know you're really busy, Sarah,
Absolutely.
so we really appreciate you having you on the show and how you're kind of changing the workplace culture. I appreciate what you do. So, thanks again for being on the show. And to the listeners, thanks again for tuning into the Future Proof Leader podcast, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.